Jocelyn and her husband met at a soccer game in their hometown of Houston in 2019. They soon married and had a beautiful baby girl. Jocelyn loved to wear matching outfits with her daughter and share cute family photos. When Jocelyn became pregnant a second time in 2021, she was elated. Having always dreamed of a big family, she couldn't wait to raise a baby boy and give her daughter a little brother. But 17 weeks into her second pregnancy, Jocelyn began to miscarry. This is when laws restricting access to reproductive health care sadly became a defining feature of Jocelyn's story. From this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, we derive that access to reproductive health care is a Jewish value. This is why Central Synagogue joins hundreds of Jewish communities nationwide in marking Repro Shabbat this week. Our country's contentious debates about reproductive health care often emphasize a belief in life's inherent sanctity. Judaism also holds this view. Pekuach nefesh, saving a human life, outweighs any other commandment in Judaism. The question, though, is what counts as a human life? Some argue that life starts at conception and that terminating a pregnancy is the equivalent of murdering a person. People of good faith and conscience believe this. You might know some of them. You might hold this view yourself. But this week's parasha, Mishpatim, teaches something different than that. Amidst all the laws enumerated in this week's Torah portion, two address the question of fetal personhood. Torah instructs that the punishment for killing a person is death, but the punishment for causing a miscarriage is a fine. Later, rabbis elaborate on that disparity between capital and financial punishments to teach that a fetus is not the equivalent of a human life. If it were, the Torah would require the same punishment for killing a person and causing a miscarriage, but it doesn't. This fact has produced millennia of Jewish laws that support access to a wide variety of reproductive health care, including abortion. And still, Torah also acknowledges here that the loss of a pregnancy is a real loss. Many of us know this pain well. Pregnancy can be sacred, and the ending of a pregnancy, irrespective of whether that ending is intentional, can bring physical, psychological, and spiritual pain. Torah honors that potential life has real, holy value, but not the same value as a full human life, including the life of the pregnant person. I think again about Jocelyn, who was devastated to lose the baby she longed to hold. There are parts of her story that may be difficult to hear. Once her miscarriage began, it became clear that the fetus growing inside of her could never become a viable life. In such a scenario, medical professionals agree that the safest treatment for the pregnant person is to facilitate the miscarriage that already began. In some states, Jocelyn would have received prompt medical intervention. But in Texas, such treatment is now considered an illegal abortion. Under the threat of prosecution, fines, and even jail time, Jocelyn's doctors could not intervene until the fetal heartbeat stopped on its own. So for 40 hours, Jocelyn suffered excruciating pain while doctors repeatedly checked for a fetal heartbeat. Jocelyn was discharged 8 hours after completing her miscarriage, despite her ongoing heavy bleeding and cramping. When she called the hospital later to report her continued pain, her suffering was dismissed as normal. 3 days later, Joselie died. She was only 28 years old. Joselie's story didn't need to end this way. Heartbreaking, complicated, real-world cases like this one show us how much we need a religious roadmap. We need a Jewish playbook that emphasizes the centrality of a pregnant person's life while also acknowledging the multifaceted dynamics that shape any conversation about pregnancy and reproductive health care. Luckily for us, our rabbis do offer us a framework for approaching these questions, particularly through the lens of who should decide on an individual's medical treatment. Perhaps surprisingly, this roadmap appears in a section of the Talmud about Yom Kippur. While discussing the mitzvah of fasting for the Day of Atonement, the rabbis consider a person who is sick. They wonder, who determines if a sick patient should fast? Our sages first assert that the patient decides if fasting is right for them. One rabbi imagines a case where 100 outside experts all say that a patient can fast, but the patient himself says he feels too sick. Even in this scenario, we listen to the patient and let him eat on Yom Kippur. The patient, not an outside authority or even 100 outside authorities, is the best judge of their own health. But the rabbis don't stop there. Medical questions are complicated and the stakes are high. And as we've seen, preserving human life is crucial in Jewish tradition. Our sages know there might be times when we make bad, even destructive choices for our bodies, or when we might not be the best judge of our treatment. So, even while they say that the patient is the expert on their body and experience, our rabbis also insist that we follow doctors' medical wisdom if the patient's life is at stake. According to our sages, medical decisions should be made by a patient and a doctor. 100 outside experts or 535 members of Congress should not decide what's best for a person's health, our Talmudic rabbis teach. Imagine if we applied this thinking to each pregnant person's pain and preferences. This sadly wasn't true for Joselie. Neither she nor her doctors really determined her treatment. Anti-abortion policies did. But imagine what might have been possible for her if the values of Parshat Mishpatim and the Talmud had informed her care. When she called the hospital to describe her continued pain, she might have been taken seriously as an expert on her own body. And even earlier, doctors might have been free to provide necessary, prompt, life-saving medical intervention when her miscarriage first began. If she and her doctors had had the final say, like the rabbis in the Talmud teach, she might very well be alive today. I am just about Joselie's age. I have never given birth, but I pray that I will one day have that privilege. And if I would be lucky enough to have a baby girl just like Joselie did, I pray that she will know a world where we all will have full access to life-saving medical care. A world where she will get to choose how and when to build her family in consultation with medical professionals who can freely support her. A world where her experiences, hopes, and pain will be taken seriously. A world where she will always be seen as the ultimate expert on her own life and her own body. May we live to see that world. May we work to build that world together.